Is there any additions or deletions to the agenda? Hearing none, motion to approve the agenda is circulated. Deputy Mayor Tanner, Councillor Frazier. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. We have a few people in the gallery with us tonight, and we're going to acknowledge them as we should. These are, for those that are watching on Eastlink or YouTube or listening, these are members of the fire departments that came to Bridgewater in October to help with the King Street fire. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again, and I'll say it again and again and again, that we are beyond thankful for your service to our community. And as Chief Noss said, if you call our town, we will be there without hesitation to help you. This was mutual aid at its best. This is how things should be with our neighbors, our friends and our neighbors, not sitting there counting how many county lines or how many municipal boundaries are between locations and then making the decision whether you go to help a friend in need or not. This is just, you drop everything and go. It's extraordinary what you all do. I couldn't do it. You're the best of the best, and as volunteers, without you in each of our respective communities, I don't know where we would be. And that's not an exaggeration, and it's not out of the realm of realistic. Our men and women for our volunteer fire services, we know you do more than just put out fires. You volunteer in your communities in different capacities. You're there for car wrecks and other things. And again, we're just indebted to you for the service that you've shown us, and cannot thank you enough. So we have a certificate, and I'm going to call down each department in order, and if whoever's here from those departments would like to come down, that would be great. And first is Blockhouse. Who's here from Blockhouse? Anybody?
No one.
No. All right, well, we'll make sure that they have it. All right. Chester. I know Chester's here. We can clap at them. Bank. Did you talk to me, Bill?
Yeah.
Spring. I know Liverpool's here. New Germany, I saw New Germany. None? Yeah. We knew two couldn't make it, so that must mean everyone else is here. Northfield.
Northfield's here.
Speak.
Oakville. Tri-district. And Bridgewater. Now, do you want to say a few words?
Your worship, council members, gallery, I said it 1,000 times already, and I'll keep saying it. Can't thank you enough for you coming to our aid when we needed it. No questions asked, and we worked well together. It just goes to show that we can work with one another without any problems at all. And we're forever indebted to you, and if ever you are in need, we'll be right there for you as well. Once again, thank you very much.
Yeah, so thank you once again, and you're more than welcome to stay for the remainder of the meeting, but don't feel obligated to. So, thank you again.
You don't want to stay?
And take some cake on your way out.
See you, John. Take care. Take care, Darren. See you, Bubba. See you, Bub.
Go ahead and one. I was going to act up tonight, now I can't.
Moving along on our agenda, our first order of business before we move into delegations is the introduction of staff. We have a new staff member, and I'm going to pass this over to our Director of Parks, Recreation and Culture, Sandy Mayor-Dobman, to introduce Diana.
Hey, I guess there's no family in that bunch there for you, Diana. So welcome, everyone. So Diana started working with her department, the Parks and Recreation Department, on September 11th. She has a Bachelor of Recreation Management from Acadia University. She most recently worked as a physical activity coordinator with the region of Queens. And prior to that, she was a Waste Resource Education Compliance Officer with HRM for about 6 years. She led lots of public engagements. We now have an expert on staff, I guess, on garbage sorting. She worked with the Blue Nose Coastal Action Foundation from 2003 to 2010, and she did in-school education sessions. She was an in-school educator on topics like geocaching and environmental topics. She enjoys running, cycling, golf, fishing, geocaching, among other things, so she's a recreation person at heart. I find out while working with her that she's pretty level-headed, friendly, good sense of humor, and a good fit for our department, and we're really happy to have her. She is also now an honorary member of the Christmas on LaHave committee, because she's on the hay bale snowman building crew, and she also helped with our wreath decorating today. So we're happy to have her on the team, and come on up here, and I think she might want to say a word.
Sure, thank you, and I'm very happy to be part of the Bridgewater team. I just want to extend an invitation for anyone who dropped by my office. I think I've met most, but there's a few faces that I haven't met. Drop by my office, say hello, share some ideas with me, and I'd be happy to have a chat. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome. All right, and it's exactly 6:10. We have our first delegation, which is Craig Collins, principal for Nova Scotia Community College Lunenburg campus. And welcome, Craig, to the podium to give us a presentation on the Make Way campaign. And I'd love it if you just really quickly gave us an update on the building, which looks amazing.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Good evening, Your Worship, and members of council, and those in the gallery. A few less now. Just a quick update on our infrastructure project, our curtain wall project. We are anticipating that the contractors will be finished by the end of this semester. So we're looking at by the end of December that they will be finished the work on the exterior of the building. We've been extremely fortunate with weather this fall, as you will all attest, that it worked in our favor so that we had minimal delays, and we're very pleased with that. But we're very proud of how the building is looking, and we think that all the amazing things that we do inside are going to be mirrored by the shiny facade that we will now be sporting. So we're very, very pleased with that. Thank you. Switching gears, it's my pleasure to come before you tonight to take a few minutes to give you an update on the Make Way campaign for NSCC, and in particular the Lunenburg campus portion of that. There we go. So Make Way is NSCC's most ambitious campaign to date and is based upon 3 objectives. The first, to build NSCC brand awareness in our communities, to develop a culture of philanthropy within the college and within our communities as it relates to NSCC, and the third goal, and is not necessarily the most important, but others might think it is, and that's to reach our goal of $25 million. To date, we've raised over $21 million. And provincially earmarked for the following areas: student aid, innovative programming, instructional equipment, and centers of expertise. And on the slide in front of you, student aid is broken out a little bit further to in 8 other areas: student bursaries, student work funds. So we want to be able to provide students with opportunities to work within our campuses to earn money while they're going to school. Urgent aid. Sometimes we have students who come across situations that are unexpected. They're not necessarily budgeted expenses, so we want to be able to help them get over that small hurdle so they don't have to exit their education or leave their education. Extraordinary learning opportunities. From time to time, students go internationally to do service learning, to provide some of the provide opportunities to other less fortunate areas and to apply some of the skills that they're acquiring. And the other one I'll mention is mental health. I don't think many facets of our community or of society today would not be impacted by mental health. So we want to provide our students with a foundation of support so that they can continue to be successful as they conclude or complete their journey at NSCC. To date, we've had amazing support from our industry partners who want to support the amazing work we do to support the economy of Nova Scotia through the training we provide Nova Scotians. A number of family foundations have also supported NSCC through their generous donations, particularly the Joyce Family Foundation and the Sobey family and their foundation. And these are some of our major contributors that have contributed to date, because they support the work that we do and believe in the work that we want to do in the future. Some have decided to remain anonymous, and certainly that's a wish upon the donor if he or she or the organization wish to remain anonymous, but we certainly celebrate and recognize all of those contributions. At the end of the day, our goal is to live up to our mission, which is building Nova Scotia's economy and quality of life through education and innovation. On October 5th, NSCC embarked on the public phase of our campaign in all of our campuses. We are now starting a year-long community phase where the goal is to raise $350,000 that will support and stay Lunenburg campus students. We have 3 goals. The $350,000 will support student aid, providing bursaries and urgent aid to address financial barriers faced by students so all can access post-secondary education. Innovative programming will allow Lunenburg campus to become even more responsive to the needs of industry by continuing to offer a cutting-edge learning environment. And instructional equipment will support the acquisition of state-of-the-art technologically advanced tools and equipment for our learners and their programs. Now more than ever, the province of Nova Scotia needs a vibrant community college system that touches all parts of the province. The world of work is changing, and those entering the workforce are increasingly going to need specific skills for their careers. They might need upskilling and retraining as they progress through their work life. NSCC provides its learners with opportunities for hands-on learning and community service to give employers the kind of employee that will give their organization a competitive edge. Lunenburg campus offers a variety of programs and learning opportunities. On the overhead, you will now see we have 4 concentration areas. School of Access, which allows students who currently do not have their high school diploma an opportunity to complete that. Then they may enter into a program. School of Trades and Technology, which is a large portion of our offerings. School of Business, and School of Health and Human Services. Also, Lunenburg campus offers programs that are not necessarily core, but they are more tailored towards continuing education and customized learning. In particular, the customized learning is really where we find our sweet spot with supporting industry and local employers so that they can upskill their employees, get new skill sets to maintain their relevancy within their industry. The Make Way is supported by an external community committee of local business leaders and supporters of the campus. We also have a companion committee internally made up of local campus employees. And over the next year, these 2 groups will come together and do amazing work for us to provide the guidance and support, which will be invaluable in our success of reaching our goal. Just a little bit of information saying how the world of work is now changing. Is projected 2/3 of projected job openings from 2011-2020 will require a college or a university education. I should also say that one of probably our best kept secrets are our extensive articulation agreements, where students can come to Lunenburg campus or any NSCC campus to complete a diploma program that would articulate into a corresponding 4-year degree at another post-secondary institution. So over the last few years, the number of articulation agreements with our sister organizations throughout the province has really grown. So we're very proud of that, of providing an opportunity for students who want to further their education, the opportunity to do so as well. Everyone who shares NSCC's vision of transforming Nova Scotia, one learner at a time, will be invited to help make way for others. Our goal is ambitious as it is simple: to remove barriers for those on their NSCC journey. Providing an opportunity for our learners to live, learn, and stay in their communities is vital to the well-being of our province. There are a number of ways that interested individuals can give. You can certainly go to the NSCC website, or you can call any of our local campuses. As you will know, our roots run deep in Bridgewater and in Lunenburg County. We've been here for approximately 50 years now. Initially as the Lunenburg Regional Vocational School, and then after we became board governed, the Lunenburg campus of Nova Scotia Community College. So we've been here for approximately 50. We're looking forward to the next 50 years. Now that we have a new curtain wall, a new shell, I think we're ready for that challenge. So thank you, Your Worship, for the time, and I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Questions, Councilor McGuinness?
You mentioned vocational schools as opposed to NSCC today.
Mhm.
Is there such a thing as a vocational school nowadays, or is there a role for vocational schools?
Well, I think what our role is to provide vocational training, but also to expand that.
Okay.
Certainly, an individual who would come into our program would receive those technical skills or those types of skill sets that I would associate with an electrician or a plumber. But we also want a well-rounded individual who's able to think critically, be able to articulate their ideas and their beliefs, so that when they go into the workforce, they're going to be able to be the best employee that they can be for their employer. So vocational training, very important, but we also want to instill skills that are beyond the actual hard, I'll call it a hard skill, a number of soft skills as well. To be a community member and a contributing member of your community is something that through their service learning projects is very important as well.
I have supplementaries,
Yep.
but if someone else would like to.
You go ahead.
Well, I just want to know what the draw area, your students come from how far away?
I would say about 90% of our students come from 2 counties, Lunenburg and Queens, and then the adjacent counties to those would make up the remainder of our catchment. But for the most part, people within 45 minutes are coming to Lunenburg campus.
Deputy Mayor Tanner.
Craig, your mission vision statement specifically mentions innovation, and last week we were at a conference and the province was really touting innovation, hub investment, and
Yeah.
sandbox investment. Specifically, they were mentioning the NSCC, and did our campus or your campus get any of that funding, and how does that play out? Or
Yeah, it's still to be determined.
Okay.
We are working provincially with our Dean of Applied Research, who has under his portfolio innovation
Okay.
and entrepreneurship. So it's certainly something that we've built into our recent strategic plan that
Okay.
was created in the spring of this past year. So we take advantage of any opportunities, partnerships with other post-secondaries. This week we're having some work we're doing with Acadia on the campus with regards to entrepreneurs and small business owners. So
Okay.
we are forging our way in that area, but it's a high priority for the college.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Councillor Graves.
Craig, what's the top course at Lunenburg? Is it nursing, is it business?
I would say the most in-demand courses, I would say practical nursing, our
Okay.
nursing program. We have a wait list every time or every year that it's offered. Health and Human Services right now are very important because they're in demand in our area.
Yeah.
As you would probably know as I, it's not always easy to get a tradesperson. So a lot of our programs in the School of Trades and Technology also are in big demand. And so when we look at programming for the future, we're looking at something that is sustainable. And something that is going to give an opportunity for a young man or a young lady an opportunity to have a lifestyle that they want and make a livelihood so that they can stay in the area to raise their family. So we want to make sure we're very careful about what kind of programming we want a nice mix of a little bit of everything.
Okay, great.
Councillor Thorburn.
Yes, at one of our REN meetings, South Shore Enterprise Network, there seemed like some business owners couldn't get qualified people or trained people to fit their job market.
Mhm.
And I think by partnering with the community college is a great way to bring in new courses so that they can have the people that they need for the industries that we have around locally.
Absolutely. I think one of the first objective of this campaign is brand awareness, and I think it's a really amazing opportunity for us to delve back deep into our communities to open up the doors to our local industry partners and say, we can assist with some of those challenges that you might have. We just need to have those conversations. So we're definitely open and anxious to have those conversations.
Great, thank you very much.
Any more questions from council? Councillor Fisher.
Hi. You mentioned about other programming options. I was just wondering, like continuing ed and the custom learning, what percentage of that I know would make up the community college's what they actually...
Activity.
Yeah.
No, that's a great question. Currently, our population fluctuates around 350 to 400 students,
Okay.
and I will call them core students. So they come, every day of the week, however they're scheduled, they're full-time students. I would also suggest that that number of people, again, come through NSCC Lunenburg, through the Con Ed offerings, continuing education offerings, or through customized training offerings. One of our biggest community partners with training would be Michelin, for instance. So we do an extensive amount of training with them to upskill their employees. So it's a nice mix. I'd like to see more activity, and to Councillor Thorburns' comment, getting more people to come in, I think would be great. And I think those types of activities are going to be crucial for our local industries.
Yeah, I agree that more of that could be
Yeah.
shared in our community, because I think
Absolutely.
it's a great best practice for a lot of employers in their training that
Absolutely.
can enhance.
If I may, I would also say that over the past year, we have been getting more involved with apprenticeship training in our area. And since the Nova Scotia Apprenticeship Agency, some changes that they made there, we're actually working very closely with them now to bring block training to Lunenburg campus. And so we're starting to get into that area, which I think is an untapped source to help apprentices who now, for the most part, have to go to Halifax. So that can be, we want it to be affordable and not cost prohibitive.
Okay. Thanks.
Councillor McGinnis, did you want to?
Yeah, I'm not sure how good this question is, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
I'd like to know.
No, well, we live in a rapidly changing world,
Yes.
as you know probably better than me. And your campus up here has evolved. And one of the things that I read about a lot are things called artificial intelligence and robots.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see us evolving in that area with robotic training or whatever you do with that type of thing?
Potentially.
It scares me.
Yeah, well, maybe it should, maybe you shouldn't. I'm not at this point, there's nothing that we haven't had any plans to delve into to that area. We are certainly looking at, as a provincial system, doing analysis and big data is sort of where we are right now in an area that we're diving into, taking massive amounts of data and trying to find different ways of doing that work. So I don't foresee within the next short period of time any robots. I'm sure there's a robot that could be a principal and do a fantastic
No,
job.
I'm not about your college. I'm talking about in the industry.
Yeah, no, certainly, mechanism and being, that's where we're moving. And,
Yeah.
and I think if you talk to officials at any of the manufacturing companies in our area, if they're not looking to introduce that type of technology, they may be finding themselves on the outside looking in to remain competitive. Yeah.
No further questions. Thank you for coming in, Craig.
My
Really
absolute
appreciate the
pleasure.
presentation, and love to be updated on how the fundraising goals are going. And
Absolutely.
So
I guess I will be back.
Perfect.
Great.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Our next delegation is Marisa Eisner, who's the administrator of Hillside Pines, and she's going to speak to us about the ownership of Hillside Pines, which is on our agenda. And I think probably what we'll do is after Marisa's presentation, and we've asked the questions that we have to be asked, maybe we'll, out of courtesy, move that item and deal with it right after her well, I'll call for delegations, and if there are none, then we'll deal with that. Is that acceptable to council? No? Okay, thank you.
Well, good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? I'm a little shorter than Craig, I think. So, I am the administrator of Hillside Pines, and I think everyone knows that's the long-term care facility here in town at 77 Exhibition Drive. We have been in operation now for 35 years. In 1982, it was the beginning. And I think what I'm going to do is not reiterate everything, because I believe you have it in your package, but just do a very quick overview, and then if you have questions, by all means, I'll try to answer them to inform your decision. So I'm coming representing the board and of Hillside Pines with two formal requests for ownership. One, the deed transfer to 77 Exhibition Drive, which is where Hillside Pines is. And the second, a request for deed transfer of the adjacent Christie Street property, which runs in behind Hillside up into its courtyard. So just to give you a little bit of a brief history, Hillside was a joint project between the town of Bridgewater and the municipality of the district of Lunenburg. As I mentioned, it started, or the original lease was signed in '82. In that original contract, after 55 years, the property would be turned over to the society. So as the years moved along and people change, and I think memories go with the people that left, we've been operating as a nonprofit society with the assumption that the society owned the building. The land has always been leased from the town for $100 a year, but it's that it's the society part that has brought us to the point we're at today. It recently came to light that legally it's not the case, that the society owns us. Guess what? It's the town of Bridgewater and the municipality of the district of Lunenburg that still legally own Hillside part and parcel. Along with that comes a number of issues, I suppose. But I believe you have letters that were written on September 28th to Mr. Smith, Ken Smith, and I see we have a new CEO now, so I believe he's been involved in the information. But outlining the motion from the Board of Hillside, so requesting the deed transfers. Two reasons, and 77 Exhibition Drive I'll deal with first. We've been given approval through the Department of Health and Wellness, which is our funder. We're licensed under the province, and any capital projects, they fund us the money. They do it in an interesting way. They give you, in this case, we're looking at an energy retrofit project, which is very, very significant for Hillside, and it's approximately $750,000, and we've also got approval for flooring, which is another $200,000. So we're talking a little over $1 million from the province. You don't get that in all one lump sum. It's committed over a number of years, so Hillside has to go out and ask for the loan. So that is when we found out that technically we don't own the building, and we were turned down for a loan through the Department of Housing, which would have given us a very good rate based on provincial standards. So that was that's one of the reasons we want the land. The second concerns come from the neighbors of Elizabeth Avenue, which is behind Hillside. There's a row of pine trees that I believe that's why Hillside Pines was named Hillside Pines, because they're not out front any longer, but there's a row of about 50 some. They're getting up there. They're very tall, and they're concerned. We've had some calls from people on Elizabeth Avenue concerned about them. Hillside Pines is concerned about them. And I guess that's where this all came to light. Who owns the trees? So we don't own the land, we don't own the building. The trees are becoming a concern. And in terms of liability issues, what happens if something happens to those trees? One was hit by lightning a number of years ago. It's still standing, but so we have to do something with the trees as well. So those are the two main concerns for Hillside and our wish to have the deed transfer. In the original lease, after 55 years, they would turn it over to Hillside anyway. That was there. So we're asking to speed it up another 20 years so we can go after loans at a better rate. We want to be like the community college and be around for another 50 years. Our infrastructure is very good, and I think that's important that we maintain the buildings. So we do need that ability to borrow money. I might note that I believe it's in your package, this same letter went to the municipality, and the municipality is willing to give up their share of Hillside based on the town's decision. So, the second request is independent of 77 Exhibition, and it's Christie Street Extension, which I mentioned goes up in behind us into the courtyard, in behind the Pineview Apartments, which are attached to us. They're owned by the Western Region Housing Authority, and there's no question with that. But The Christie Street we use for emergencies. We use it for the oil trucks and whatnot to come in to access the oil tanks, etc. So for that reason, and the safety and security, it's a small green space right now, and if that was somehow designated to something else, an extension of the parking lot behind the Dufferin building, it would come right up in between, right in behind us, and there's some safety concerns with that, of having people wandering behind you when you're right up in your backyard, so to speak. And if we were lucky enough down the road, if we can extend it for extra beds in the future, if that ever comes to pass, then we're ready. So those are my my two asks, so to speak. I think I pretty well covered that, unless would anyone have questions that perhaps I can answer that I didn't fill in the spaces.
Any questions of Mrs. Eisner? No? We've had this information for a while.
But-
Councillor Graves?
I guess the 50 trees, it's not a row of trees, it's a stand of trees or a grove, correct?
Well, they're pretty well lined up. I don't know how to describe that. They go along the back of the property, so I would say they're pretty well in a row. I don't know if that was naturally or somebody planted them, but they're fairly tall.
And we don't know who owns the trees?
Well, they're on the land.
They're on
the land that we
Okay,
lease.
so they're town trees.
So if we convey
Yeah.
the property, the trees go with the property.
Unless you like to cut them down.
Okay.
Any other questions? No? Okay.
Okay.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Before we deal with this matter, I'll ask if there's any members of the public that wish to speak on any topics.
I have one brief matter, but to keep flow going, I'm happy to wait for this matter to conclude. It's up to you.
No, if you don't mind doing it now, that'd be actually great. Just
Totally fine.
introduce yourself and the topic that you're speaking on, please.
I am Siobhan Doyle, and I am on the Bridgewater Active Transportation Committee. I'm a volunteer. Previous to that, I was on the School Travel Planning Committee, which had very similar goals of promoting active transportation of students, but now of town members in particular. I wanted to speak a little bit about the great work the town is doing on the trail system. Thrilled to see all the beautiful trails in town. In particular, I'm enjoying the trail that goes from Woodland Gardens up to Exhibition Drive, that new extension that just got done. I walk it a couple of times a week with my dog. It's absolutely gorgeous. I have also, as a result of being on the committee, walked the proposed Glen Allen extension that goes from, I believe it's Hollingsworth, I think, all the way over to the other side. And I've walked it twice to go in and assess as a part of the committee where we kind of want it to meander and so on. I understand that there's some concern from some of the residents who live adjacent to where the proposed trail is going to be. So I just wanted to offer my comments about that in particular. I went and spoke this week with a couple of the homeowners on Sharon Drive, which are the ones that are on the new extension going Exhibition down to the pond. And because I'm sure that they might have had similar concerns having their backyards right on where the new trail has now been finished. And I was pleased to find out that the two owners that I spoke with are very happy with having the new trail. One homeowner in particular said that she was thrilled that with the trail there, people seem to stay on path, as opposed to if people would walk through the woods there previously, they'd meander and might get onto your property not realizing where the boundaries and stuff were. So having a trail sort of kept people focused on the path. And she's observing that more and more people are walking it, so that's exciting for her. She also has a dog and walks on that trail too. The second owner I spoke with, it is the new trail, the extension on Woodland Gardens is exactly on her backyard. And she has a couple of small kids. And so she was anxious about the proposal and thought that might impinge on her privacy and so on. But she hasn't noticed any particular problem since then. She did point out to me that the pile of gravel and some extra earth and stuff I think was left there, but I suspect they're waiting for spring to see what fallout happens and if more stuff has to be spread. And she thought maybe there were some possible smokers on the path, although she hasn't found butts or garbage or anything, so that was a pleasure for her to notice that. But thought maybe if some no smoking signs went up, that would be helpful for her. But other than that, I can say from having walked it myself that the trail, having been clear cut a little bit, not clear cut, but sporadic stuff taken down, just from, because I was walking before the bridges were there, so I was jumping the little brook. But I've seen just from the spring how much new growth has come up. So that things, although initially it looked like it was going to be kind of sparse, it's filled in quite a bit already. And I think that homeowners that might have been anxious about having too many people too close to their backyards, that's filling in a little bit better for them. And I suspect that would hold true as well for the Glen Allen stuff. So I just wanted to say thank you. Being a volunteer committee member, that I'm thrilled with all the new trails. Love to walk them. And I want to thank the town for continuing to support active transportation and the trail construction.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Does anyone have any questions? No? Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. So that's all the members of the public that are in the gallery. So I'll ask one more time if there's anyone in the gallery that wants to speak on any other topics. But hearing none, we'll continue on with our agenda. And as promised, we'll move the correspondence for action. The first item, Hillside Pines Home for Special Care Land Ownership item, forward in the agenda. We've had the presentation from Mrs. Eisner. We've had this discussion before together. Does council have a motion they wish to put forward, and then we can have a discussion? Deputy Mayor Tanner?
I would move that town council for the town of Bridgewater convey its 1/2 tenancy and common interest in the parcel of land known as 77 Exhibition Drive, PID 600323349, owned in common with the municipality of the District of Lunenburg, to the Hillside Pines Home for Special Care Society, and execute all necessary deeds in conjunction with the municipality of the District of Lunenburg and documents of transfer to effectively convey the subject property.
Sam Seconder, Councillor Thorburn. Any discussion?
It seems reasonable.
Yeah, it seems logical.
Yep.
Partners in agreement.
Yep.
So, hearing no discussion, you ready for the question?
Question.
Question's being called. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. To the second request, someone be care to make a motion on that one. You guys are shy tonight.
I'll do that one too. then.
All right.
I can bring it forward.
All right.
Oh.
The town council for the town of Bridgewater directs staff to negotiate terms to grant an easement for property identified as PID 600323356 in favor of Nova Scotia Power, Inc.
Can I have a seconder, please? Councilor Frazier, discussion. And that was part of the request made.
So so
Yes.
this is not the larger parcel of land. This is just the right of way for Nova Scotia Power to get the renovations done, correct?
I believe that's because they have to upgrade the power lines, right? So I believe that's the request, yes.
Yep. Okay.
Any other questions?
No.
No?
Question,
Hearing
go
none.
for
Questions
it.
being called. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. There we go. You can take that back to the board, Mrs. Eisner, and good luck with the renovations. Our next item is Councilor Frazier and I have a presentation from the FCM. So we're going to move to the podium, and the presentation, I'm assuming, is loaded in the computer. All right, perfect.
We won't forget to do announcements, will we?
No, this is coming under announcements. Oh, it is different from this side. Suddenly I'm nervous. Are you nervous? Suddenly it's an odd view of all of you.
You've got 10 minutes.
Oh, I knew that was coming. Good for you. Okay. So yes, back in June, Councilor Frazier and I attended the FCM, Federation of Canadian Municipalities 2017 conference in Ottawa. This was the largest conference they've had, with, I believe they had almost 3,500 delegates at this conference. Just for FYI, next year's is in Halifax at the new Trade Center. So we hope to have a strong contingent from the town of Bridgewater and South Shore attend. Yeah, so here are some of the takeaways. Now, we gathered a lot of information, and we've kind of spoken to council, and things will start to filter into future agenda items. I will say that probably the biggest takeaway from any of these conferences is the networking time that you have to be able to sit down with colleagues from coast to coast and talk about the issues we face, which you find out are similar to the issues that they face, and then you come up with the innovative solutions and share those. So, which leads me into my piece, and I'm going to highlight two of them. And the first one is the City of Fredericton. So, I was all excited about this open source data. So that is just putting a whole bunch of information that's relevant to the community online and fully accessible. And I was all excited when the new CAO started, and I was bouncing into his office to say, isn't this great? And his response was, yes, we're going to be doing that. He already had that idea, which is great. We're all on the same page. So for those who don't know what that means, and I'll use the example of City of Fredericton. So they took their data, and it was everything from information on water and wastewater and how that flows through the city. And they just put all that data online, and people who were sitting at home, they refer to them, so did Raleigh, North Carolina in their piece, as geeks sitting at home, looked at it and came up with a solution in Fredericton that if they rerouted a couple of pieces of piping, that they could use gravity to their advantage, and after they did the work, they saved $8 million in their budget. Just by putting this data online and having people who looked at it through a different lens with a different skill set from that binary skill set of zeros and ones, looked at it and said, if you do this and this and this, you'll save some money. When they put that data out there for their staff, I believe it was snow plowing, and just one staff person looked at it, and the change they made saved $100,000. And so we're heading in that direction, which is fantastic. They have it online. This is a screenshot from the City of Fredericton's open source. They have everything from restaurant statistics, how many people go each night to different types of restaurants, to hotel nights, transportation routes, how the buses run, bus times. All that data goes online, and people who have different skill sets, like I said, a different vision than we do, can look at that and solve those issues. The one I picked up, Deputy Mayor Tanner, you'll appreciate this, in Raleigh, they have they put data online about transportation and potholes. And out of that, a group of individuals put together an app called See, Click, Fix, and it basically tags potholes through an app. That information goes directly to their public works people, and they're notified when a new pothole pops up, and they can go out and solve it. Instead of having staff, which is costly, driving around in city or town vehicles searching for potholes. So that's just one example. So I was thrilled to know that the new CAO wants to head in this direction anyway, but I'd never heard of this, so my takeaway was huge. Councilor Graves.
Is there a reward component? So if a citizen, for example, saves $8 million, is there a reward component to this, or
I
is
would
it
say
just...
the reward would be lower taxes.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's fair. No.
And we did talk about an internal system
Yeah.
where we might reward employees
Okay,
for
good.
cost savings. The commitment they made in Fredericton, and I'm just going to use their example, not suggest that this is where we're going. We'll discuss this as a council. Their reward system for sure was any cost savings would not result in layoffs.
Okay.
So if you made the organization more efficient, it might mean a realignment of duties, but it wouldn't mean that someone is going to lose your job because you saved $50,000 and you can get rid of a person. You would move them around. That was the commitment they made, and they found that they got more uptake from staff. The other one was City of Brockville, and this reminded me of Bijanuska Park. So the City of Brockville had a rail line underneath their downtown core that they basically forgot about, kind of like our river that for many, many years we kind of turned our back to. So they saw this as an opportunity to turn it into a tourist draw. And so they partnered with a number of companies. There was a presentation by Philips Lighting on the lighting that they've done, and you can kind of see it here in this tunnel. But the stats that I took away was just how this one project led to 12 full-time jobs being created and a $700,000 economic impact, positive, into the community, with 30,000 new visitors each year from this project. Now I think we all attended the music nights on Thursday nights in the new park. There were a lot of people that I certainly didn't recognize. And so it just kind of highlighted for me, it's a different project, but the same idea. It's that revitalization, taking an asset that you don't really, probably you underappreciate or undervalue, and turning it around. And I think Bridgewater's done an excellent job. So in this case, I took it away as a win for them, is kind of a win for us, but it also highlighted that the further you go, the payoff is larger. So I wanted to kind of highlight that one. And then Councillor Fragier is going to take over.
So we had some tours, and one that I attended that highlighted for me was the Mayor of Ottawa, Mayor Watson, and we went to actually City Hall, and it was Food Aid Day where we actually took in the markets inside City Hall, and then we went outside and participated in a barbecue. And it showed the support of the local beef farmers there who, like I say, we had participated in the barbecue, but it was telling the story of how they had 12 acres of farmland that actually is food source for a lot of the local food banks in Ottawa. So, and I thought from a smaller scale, when we look here at Bridgewater, I think how we're trying to enhance our community gardens, look at edible fruit trees, just starting here at Town Hall by having vegetable gardens out front. So I know this is on a larger scale, but I can see comparisons in relating to our own town in different ways. So that's why I shared that story with you. So I wanted to share a couple of the exhibitors that were good examples that I thought I could relate back to Bridgewater. There were over 150 at the show. The first one is Urban Blue, and Bridgewater has really, we've been talking about public washrooms and it being a top priority for council. And what was unique about Urban Blue was that it was a self-cleaning, also vandal resistant. So it was they had the display right there inside the trade show, which it was amazing to see how it was all put together. There's different, you can actually go on the web link I've provided. There's 20 different templates, and they were telling, they were showing each time it costs, I'm guessing 15 to 20 cents per usage. So that was the cost factor of that. But it was nice to see, you know, what's available. There's base right up to the catalog of different products, but it was one that I think we can look into. There's actually 2 manufacturers, one here in Quebec, and then there's one in the States. But yeah, it was one that I wanted to share. Next up was the Moloch North America, and they were actually at the UNSM as well. And I have some brochures that if you're interested I can show you after, but I think of Bridgewater and planning around residential developments, especially our apartment complexes that were here in town. The big thing with Moloch is the space saving. They're compact, they're accessible, they're efficient, and they're sanitary. So one of the Moloch size, which is 1 cubic yard, can replace 6.5 of the 32-gallon green carts. So overall, it's more efficient, hygienic, as it says. So it's something that I think we can look at
is there opportunities here in Bridgewater? Next up is PG Solutions, and basically they shared relating to Mayor Mitchell's information on data. It's kind of implementing the digital world, talking about enhanced technology, having apps on our phone, and having information. This particular company was out of Quebec, and they service 1,000 municipalities. And some of the things that they do, they do permits, directories, and they take requests from citizens all on the digital app. So again, I think it's the way of embracing and going forward is looking at opportunities with technology. The last one is Traffic Logics. They were also at the Halifax UNSM. And I know we often talk about having traffic solutions, calming solutions, but it just gave some examples of one in particular that stood out was the modular rubber solutions such as speed humps and speed cushions that we always think that we need signage, but the speed cushions are a new kind of, I think it would be great to see more of that. And also signages that we can give variable messages, especially in school zones where we are looking for slower speeds. So I think that wraps up my presentation. And yeah.
What's a speed cushion?
A speed cushion. It's like a rubberized, similar to the speed bumps, but it's actually made out of rubber.
So it's
Yeah,
softer, absorbent?
I think so.
It's a
Instead of a
softer
hard-
speed bump.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Great stuff. No, that's great, thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks.
Is that under 10 minutes?
No, it wasn't, but go for it.
The good thing is I'm the timekeeper.
You're the boss.
I
You
was
can
reaching for the gavel.
Yeah. Okay, announcements, council announcements. Councilor McGinnis, did you have
Yes, Your Worship,
something?
I have one. The event of the year will take place on Saturday, November 25th, the Christmas on LaHave Street Parade and fireworks. So mark your calendars now. It looks like we're going to have probably one of the biggest parades we've ever had, with more floats than ever. And so we look forward to seeing everyone there.
Great. Councilor Graves.
Yeah, I guess the community really came together with their donations to the Whimsical Children's Christmas Store. Our friends at the Arts say that we're now in pretty good shape for this year's scheduled event, which is for Saturday, December 2nd from 10 till 2. Admission is always a donation to the food bank, and we encourage the children to bring small bills and change. So I think we're a go. So we're excited about that.
Fantastic.
13th year.
Fantastic news. More announcements.
Just one little one. Hopefully all of you were out to our November 11th Remembrance Day service. Awesome service. John McDonald done an awesome job. But anyway, the original date for the Military Appreciation Night for the Lumberjacks was November the 10th. That's the good news. The bad news is they was out of town that night. So they've rededicated the 24th of November, which is a Friday night, for military and Legion members can get in uniform for $6. So it's just been postponed to the 24th. So hopefully all the military personnel and Legion members will dress up in uniform and really come out to that appreciation night for veterans. Thank you.
for that. Any other announcements?
Oh,
from
yeah.
council?
Just one that I noticed today, and Councillor Thorburn reminded me, the South Shore Lumberjacks are now ranked the 10th best team in Canada
Yeah.
in
Awesome.
Junior A hockey. That's the first time ever for our franchise, so that's an excellent recognition and great PR for our area.
Yes, as they do better, of course, there's a economic impact to the community.
Yes.
So the better they do, the better we do. So you
Yes,
should be
absolutely.
cheering on the Lumberjacks. Remember, you can obviously take Bridgewater Transit to the game.
And
So-
back.
And back.
And back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I believe that's actually, it's increasing. The number of people who take it each week is increasing each game. So that's good news. Any other announcements? No? Councilor McDonald, you didn't miss much. We've been through our delegations, and we did do the Hillside Pines item,
Right.
because the delegation was here. So next item is minutes from October 23rd, regular scheduled council meeting. Any questions, concerns, comments, bless you, with those? Hearing none, can I have a motion to approve those, please?
Motion, your worship. I'll make your motion to approve the October 23rd regular town council meeting minutes.
Perfect, thank you. Seconder, Councilor Graves, discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Those opposed, motion is carried. Our next item is planning, energy management report 2017. And Mr. DeVried is going to work us through that. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, members of council and members of the public. Maybe I'll preface this by saying that I had a beautiful 10-minute presentation done up, and then I had a conversation with our CAO, and he encouraged me to provide a little intro to energy management. So
You made it longer?
I take no responsibility for any minute over 10. I'm going to pay for that one. So this is the annual report that you've received in your council package, put together by myself and the other members of the energy management team, who split their time between planning and engineering. So a small backstory. This is the first energy management presentation that's been given to this council, and so I thought it was prudent, and Richard agreed, to provide just a little bit of information on where it came from. So we've basically been doing energy management work at the town since 2008, and the first energy management plan for facilities took place between 2011 and 2013. That document was successfully implemented and led to a 15% reduction in energy consumption at our facilities. That was documented and led to us winning a Bright Business Award by Efficiency Nova Scotia. Very proud moment for our work, and has led to the continuation of that work. Through the energy management plan that was approved by this council in 2015, and which we are now in year 3 of implementing. It establishes goals, strategies, and actions across the facilities that that are included in the plan, and its goals are based on the recommendations of the ICSP Integrated Community Sustainability Plan and the Municipal Climate Change Action Plan. The energy management plan for facilities defines which town facilities are included under our proactive energy management system, I guess you could call it, and which are not. We occasionally get questions like, do you manage energy at the LCLC? And the answer is we do not. And so that's clearly laid out in this kind of, in this document. It also defines the responsibilities of the energy management team and various town departments, and provides a guide for capital and operating investments that we've been implementing. The intention was to produce an annual implementation report. Unfortunately, this is the first report since 2015, and the reason for that is that we lack the staff time and capacity to complete a report in 2016. So essentially, you're getting 2 years' worth of an update here. Just as another little bit of background, I'll read you our energy management mission statement, which is the guiding vision for the plan, which says that the town of Bridgewater is committed to building, maintaining, and operating healthy, comfortable, and energy-efficient facilities. We employ responsible energy management practices to improve energy efficiency, produce renewable energy, and encourage energy-conscious behaviors among staff and the public. Through these actions, we will reduce our dependence on fossil fuels, protect the environment by minimizing our greenhouse gas emissions and other pollutants, and reduce our operating costs, thereby maximizing the resources available to provide services to the public. And of course, that's its underlying philosophy of much of the work that we do. There are 3 goals in the plan. I won't get into them in a lot of detail, but there's an energy reduction goal for non-process facilities. That's everything outside of our water and wastewater infrastructure. A 5% reduction in energy consumption at our water and wastewater infrastructure, and a goal to produce more renewable energy at our facilities. So the implementation report that you have in front of you outlines the progress that we've made to achieving those goals and the work that's happening to do so. The energy management team consists of 3 members of staff, divided between myself in planning and our facilities supervisor and our environmental services manager in engineering. To implement the plan, we're focusing on 5 strategic areas. The main, about over 90% of the plan is focused on energy efficiency improvements, which still makes a lot of sense for us as an organization. Secondarily, to stabilize and increase renewable energy generation. Those who have been around this table a little while know that we've had a few hiccups with some of our solar installations, and so the idea was to get those back on track and operating properly so that they can produce the energy that they were intended to. And then to work on 3, I guess you could call them soft areas for energy management, so staff and visitor energy education, energy efficient purchasing, and staff energy management capacity and knowledge. So those are laid out in some detail in the report that you have. I won't go into a lot of detail, and maybe the tact I'll take is I'll respond to questions about any specifics that council has. One thing that I did want to provide you with a little bit of information on, I don't think this is in the report, but just so you're aware, what does energy management include? So if a facility is included in energy management, what it means is that we proactively set energy management goals for that facility. What should it be achieving? What is it currently achieving? We identify energy management opportunities, leading to a proactive stance on reducing consumption and so on. We recommend energy improvements to senior management and then to council through the annual budget process. So you will start, if a facility is included, you'll start hearing recommendations. Well, we should do this or we should do that, and what do you think? And then it also means that it's included in our staff and visitor education efforts, and that we conduct ongoing energy monitoring through energy bill analysis, and then more detailed assessment if we're able to and if it's warranted. So that's sort of what our complete package involves around our facilities. So just a couple of quick snappers. Our town hall solar system was for hot water was installed in 2010 and is in some ways one of our flagship installations and has been operating well since that time. One of the best energy efficient lighting upgrades that we did is in a facility we no longer operate, but just as an example, this lighting upgrade in the old arena had a payback of less than 6 months, which meant that even within 1 calendar year, it made more sense to do the project than to not do the project. Wow. And while we've skimmed a lot of those early return projects off, there's definitely still some great projects that are worth doing. We carefully monitor energy consumption at all facilities. We have very detailed energy consumption records from all of our operations. And that's what we use to inform decisions on energy issues. We have an energy awareness campaign. There's signage in different facilities, and from time to time we go around and we speak with staff in those facilities. Unfortunately, this is something that we haven't had sufficient capacity to work on in the last year or two, so the education campaign has stalled a bit, but it is something that's been designed and that can be continued when time allows. So the big news, this graph shows the total energy consumption across our facilities, and as you can see, it's been dive bombing from its start in 2007, 2008 when we started energy tracking to where it is now at less than 50% of our total consumption. The bad news, unfortunately, is that that's because we lost a few facilities. So this is not a good indicator of how well we're doing. What we actually need to do is look at it from a per facility basis and looking at the floor space that we actually use. So this is a much more nuanced graph over here that shows our actual energy performance over time And as you can see, it's a reduction of significantly more than 15%, and we're actually on track for our non-process facilities to achieve 21% energy reduction since we started tracking. And for our greenhouse gas emissions, we've definitely exceeded our targets, and that's mostly because the Nova Scotia grid has been greening as well. So power is greener than it was when we started tracking, and that benefits us from a GHG perspective. The situation's a little more complicated when we look at our water and wastewater facilities. Basically, the issue that's been happening is that we have a wastewater treatment plant that's needed quite a lot of support in the last year or two as infrastructure has been aging, and that infrastructure has needed more energy to control in order to meet operating requirements. And so most of the increase that you see in recent years is due to one facility requiring additional energy. And there's been several fixes and projects that have been underway to try to bring the facility back in operation the way it's intended to, and energy, unfortunately, will take a back seat until the facility is operating as it needs to, as that's our primary regulatory requirement. So needless to say, energy decisions do get factored in as much as possible as facility decisions are made. And this is one that's been challenging for us to manage. So summary slide, this is also provided in your report. We've got about a 21% reduction in annual energy use at our non-process facilities. And at water and wastewater, we're going in the wrong direction. But at the end of the day, those facilities have to operate according to regulatory requirements. And so we understand that that's the source of that backward slide. The good news is that we've definitely still got significant savings to account for over the time that we've been working. And we've calculated just shy of $300,000 in energy savings over the period of time that we've been monitoring. So that's due to the many different savings across these facilities, and it's only recently plateaued a bit because of our backward slide with water and wastewater. Overall, it's definitely a positive news story. Bridgewater is doing far more than many of our municipal partners on energy management issues, particularly from the energy reduction side. And most of our fixes are working very well. So overall, it's a positive news story, and there's definitely much to be proud of. This is the old budget that was approved back in 2015, just to give you a sense of the order of magnitude of the energy management program across the 5 different areas and then into the 5 years. The actuals have varied quite a bit from this. Some projects have gotten deferred, others were not implemented, others cost more than budgeted. Unfortunately, I don't have those numbers in front of me, but those could be provided to council if you're interested. And just a quick note on some of the large numbers, especially this over 200,000 figure and that one. Those are mainly due to something on the order of $150,000 to $200,000 upgrade at one facility, the Des Brisets Museum, wastewater treatment plant, and those upgrades were done for reasons other than energy management. We've just captured them in this, so not all of that $700,000 was just for energy management. We've just been capturing some of those other upgrades in the process, just to give you a sense of what we're doing. At the end of the day, this is probably one of the numbers that council cares most about, besides our greenhouse gas emissions reductions, which is our total cost reductions. So as you can see, we peaked in total spending on energy in 2013-14 at just over $600,000 before tax and related costs. For example, rentals of equipment is not included there. That's purely energy consumption. Between propane, fuel oil, and electricity. And since then, our actual spending on energy has decreased significantly, primarily as a result of letting go of facilities, although the energy component can be calculated. And what this chart shows is this lighter blue here is the amount that's attributable to energy savings from energy management work. And then this curve here is the cumulative energy savings. And as I said, we're just shy of $300,000. And if we didn't have one facility that was having some issues, that line would be significantly higher today than where it is. Your report gives you a detailed breakdown by facility, 1 page per facility, providing a number of key statistics, including the energy consumption, some of the most recent energy upgrades, initiatives currently underway, and then kind of an indicator system as to, is the trend up, is it down, is it improving, and what's the target, as well as a summary from staff's perspective on how the facility is doing and what its opportunities are. So that's all there in your package, and as I said, I'd be happy to provide you with any information. There's been some developments in the staff report since it was issued. I had a conversation with Richard, and what started out as a question to council as to whether 2 particular facilities should be included in the energy management work or not. I'm now tonight providing this to you just for information. So the Bridgewater swimming pool is an interesting case. It used to be under energy management, then it was taken off energy management because its future was in doubt, and now the staff that work on energy management have some question as to whether we should include it again in our program. There are some energy upgrades happening at it this year that are coming out of a kind of a separate budget line. And we do track its energy consumption, but it's not something that we're actively focusing on other than what's been planned right now. And the Girl Guide cabin, I guess we're just not quite sure what's happening. We know facility upgrades are taking place this year. However, we are not the recipient of the utility bills for that facility, so we have zero information on energy that relates to it, and we have some question as to whether we should be working on energy issues there. I believe some of the upgrades do relate to energy efficiency, but again, I don't have a lot of information. So just for council's future consideration, I guess, or for further discussion with our CAO. I'll skip that slide. There you go. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Leon. Any questions? Deputy Mayor.
I have a whack in them.
All right, fire away.
When I have a lot of questions, I'll call it a whack. Leon.
Awesome.
Leon, a couple of times you mentioned that you lack staff resources to prepare a report. You lack sufficient capacity for an educational campaign. If we had staff capacity, or if we added a staff person, would there be a reward or a payback as a result? So I equate it almost like the sales environment. You add a salesperson that might cost you $100,000 a year, but typically the payback is X squared or X times whatever. Is there that same sort of equation in your world?
I would say that would generally hold true.
Okay.
Because Richard, please feel free to jump in here when I'm going above my station. What we've basically seen is that the result of some of our capacity issues is that what we've got is deferred savings, right? So we're not able to get to the energy projects as quickly as what was in the 4-year energy management plan, which means that you've got deferred potential. The other thing, and this is of interest because we're approaching the later half of the plan. One of the questions that we have is the next round of energy upgrades. In some ways, we need to start thinking about those already, right? And the current energy management plan is actually energy management version 2.0, because what we did in the first 6 years was version 1.0. That's where most people are at. We're actually in version 2.0, and what does version 3.0 include, right? Sure. So as the work gets more complex, the need to have the benefit of having somebody with greater ability and greater technical training and greater time working in-house actually increases, because it means that we can do more interesting projects.
Sure. Okay.
The current cycle that we're on is that we get consultants to recommend things. Then by the time we get to the point of actually implementing something, the thing has changed, and then either we have to go back out to consultants or we have to sort of jerry-rig the difference, right? Okay. So having somebody on staff is a conversation that I've had with senior management already once or twice. There's no clear solution yet from my perspective, but it's definitely something of interest. And in the work that we're doing, for example, with the Community Energy Investment Plan, there's an item there around continuing and bolstering the town's energy management program. And there's probably some opportunities out there to make use of a part-time staff person that has that dedicated resource. But I don't know if Richard wants to.
Yeah, so that's a great question, and in fact, Leon has some time scheduled with me to discuss resourcing, and it's something certainly we'll be bringing forward to council in consideration of the budget, certainly.
Okay. Can I keep going?
That's a great question. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
we give a whack at them. So I don't know.
Did we fix the solar at the Public Works Garage? Is it working now and functioning? I know we were having.
It is,
Okay.
yes.
You noted on one of the slides, I can't remember how many back, maybe 3 or 4 back, some big expenses, and I think the final dollar amount was $711,000 or something to that effect. Those big expenses also have a long-term payback, correct? That you're not showing technically. You're not showing a future value of investing that money today is going to reward
It's
us
not a
every
net
year.
number.
Net
is
number,
really where
yeah.
we're going, yeah.
Is that
Yeah,
correct?
yeah.
Okay.
I have a slide that I didn't show, but it shows a net present value graph
Yeah.
for all the projects, and then you can kind of see several curves.
Okay.
And the big projects have sort of this very gradual net present value, and then you've got lighter projects that have a quicker payback,
Sure.
and then they all add together. But
Okay.
yes, every project has its own payback and has its own economics associated with it.
Another slide you had multiple graphs in it, and the graphs had a light blue at the top that showed savings. But the latter two,
This one here?
Yeah, 2015, 16, 2016, 17, has no savings from baseline. Why is that? What's that mean?
So what's interesting, so this graph here is for all facilities combined. And what's happened is because the wastewater treatment plant has basically consumed the savings. The
Okay.
increase in energy there has consumed the
Okay.
savings from all the other facilities.
Okay.
So if I showed you the same graph, but I took out that one facility, there would be all kinds of blue above those last few
Sure.
bars.
Okay.
But I did
Gotcha.
a net.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
The swimming pool, the outdoor swimming pool, seems like a prime candidate for solar hot water heating to perhaps extend the the season, so to speak. I mean, we open in June, and the water's freezing cold, and there's probably very little revenue coming in from swims because kids don't want to get in the freezing cold water. I know my kids don't. Is there an opportunity there, do you think? I mean, there's no trees around it, it's got a good face, I would think, on that roof.
Yeah, so we did scope out the solar potential for heating the Bridgewater swimming pool back in 2010.
Okay.
However, because the facility is only operated 2 months a year, and its equivalent energy consumption
Okay.
is only, for the showers, is only 1 tank of oil, and now it's been switched over to propane.
Okay.
But basically, your best energy projects are the ones for a facility that's used all the time,
Right.
and that cranks out lots of energy. For such a small blip in our total energy picture, your payback periods get very long
And
for
you
applying
can't-
solar.
You can't redirect that energy back into the grid somehow, or to make it a year? an
Well,
annual
if you're
cycle,
talking
you
about
mean?
solar photovoltaics,
Yeah.
that's a different story. Solar PV is different than solar hot water. So if we're talking about
Sorry, yeah, okay.
if
I
you're
was
talking about
thinking
solar hot water, you have to use it on site.
Right.
If you're talking about solar PV, that facility, and I actually show it on my chart here, is this facility is actually a possible candidate for a solar PV array, but only if the
Okay,
town is
got it.
confident that the
We've got
facility is
long-term.
going to be maintained by the town
Okay.
for, beyond a certain window, right?
Okay.
So hence back to the question of, is it a facility we're investing in or not?
Okay.
Yeah.
And
It would be great because that roof is basically south facing or just
I thought it was, yeah.
just off. So
Okay.
it's actually, and it's a very easy roof construction to work with.
So
So it'd
you
be a
can
great
use a
facility for
PV
solar.
array to still create energy to heat water.
Yeah, it's not the best use of energy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
All right, okay.
solar PV is best used to power a facility and then net meter back to the grid.
Okay.
That'll be
All
your best bang for buck.
Okay.
Yeah.
One you may not know, utility bills, who gets them at the Girl Guide cabin, out of curiosity?
The Girl Guides do.
The Girl Guides themselves do?
Currently, yes.
Okay, all right. Thank you. That's
Okay,
it.
thanks.
Councillor McDonald.
Do you have any indication of how far we are from resolving the major wastewater treatment plant issues and getting back on track with the energy program? Or is it just kind of a work in progress, and when we get there, we get there?
That would be an engineering.
I can't
Yeah.
I can't
Okay,
really
that's
comment.
fair.
I mean,
That's
all I've had is just some
Right.
glancing
You don't have any
discussions.
indication right now.
I don't really,
Sure.
I can't
We
really
can
speak to it.
Follow up with that and get a better answer for you, I don't know.
Sure, yeah, and it may be an unknown at the moment. Can I ask a second?
Yeah, for
question?
sure, yeah.
Does the proximity of the pool and the museum offer any opportunities? If you've got PV panels and they're not being, the facility's not used year-round, is there any way to feed it into the museum somehow? Buried lines or run lines, or, I have no idea. Should stop talking now.
It would, my experience says that it's probably very challenging to do
Right.
something like that and achieve a reasonable payback period.
Sure.
These are not large facilities, and by the time, you dig lines underground, et cetera,
Right.
it's probably outside the scope of a reasonable payback.
Okay.
If you had a giant roof, for a large facility in town, you can start talking about stuff like that. For smaller facilities, probably best to figure out how to use it on site.
Okay.
Yeah. The other problem is how do you distribute the energy? So if there's a large solar hot water system on the swimming pool, even if it gets to the Des Brisets Museum as hot water, that's got a heat pump attached to it.
Right.
Then how do you get that heat circulating back in that facility? So there's a lot of technical challenges.
Sure.
It sounds really nice in principle and it should be doable, but it runs into technical challenges very quickly.
Right. Yeah, you can't just plug them into each other.
Can't plug them into each other. Yeah.
Sure.
Councillor Thorburn.
Yeah, is there any opportunity with that big facility, the LCLC, for us to do something there? It certainly uses a fair amount of energy. I mean, it's cost share between two municipal units, but is there an opportunity to look at that and see there is savings? And my second question is with the fire station. I know you have propane there to do some of the heating, but that propane also feeds the stoves there that's used for frying and cooking. Is that metered anyway, or is it just all charged to energy consumption?
Maybe I'll answer the second question first. So at the fire station, we don't have sub-metering.
Okay.
So we don't know what part of the propane goes toward the energy system versus the fryers. But we are in the process this year of installing improved energy monitoring and building automation systems in that facility. That should probably get us a better sense of how much of it is going to energy.
Yeah,
So that's on the books for this year. That's one of our energy management projects, actually.
Okay, good.
With regard to the LCLC, I really can't speak to that. It's not a facility that I've had much interaction with. Certainly never been put on the books for energy management. The previous CAO had occasionally asked me to look at some of the energy consumption figures, and I provided him with some information on that, or at least some analysis, but it's not something that I've been asked to produce any reports on.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
It is a good example. Like, it's just something that should go to an LCLC meeting, I think.
Well, at one of the board meetings, there was a decision to bring in a consultant to literally go through the entire facility, an expert that does these walkthroughs and so on, so just to see what can be saved.
Yeah, because that's not your area of expertise, right, Leon? It's doing coming in and picking apart
We
little things.
don't have the technical expertise to do
Right,
that
so
on
that's
staff.
where the consultant comes in.
No.
But when that's done, putting it under the town's energy management plan, just at least so the board, because it's our money, half of that is
Sure,
our
it's our
money,
money.
right? So
Yeah.
it's in the best interest of both municipalities, I would think.
If I could add, having said that, I mean, we do energy management and energy planning. So if the town has any questions as to, approaches to do things, we would be happy to provide comment. But we also don't operate a facility that large. So
Yeah.
the scale's a little different from our existing facilities, but we'd certainly be happy to provide comment.
Our citizen rep, Danny Seelig, who's facility director for the Social Regional School, I hope I got his title right, they brought this same consultant group in and saved substantial amounts of money on energy savings, even just little things like dialing back the thermostats a bit here and there, so, yeah.
Just my own edification, I was under the impression that the Lifestyle Center was the cutting-edge green building when it was constructed. That's not the case?
So all new buildings are designed, but they need ongoing recommissioning, and there's always opportunities, even with a 5-year-old building that's built to the highest standards, there's always opportunities to examine how things are used. Oftentimes, the way operators are programming when they heat the pool, and with different things, there's a lot of opportunities to learn and recommission. So it's not a one-and-done thing.
Councillor Thorburn.
Just looking at that board there, would that be a candidate for that solar PV system? I mean, it certainly has the location and the opportunity to generate electricity, which we're spending a whole lot of money on for ice.
So I think the first hurdle is council has to decide what they want to do with that. If we're going to continue to maintain
Yeah.
a pool,
Yeah.
and I think what Leon's saying is he would love to put solar on there, but not if 6 months later we say, you know, as soon as the agreement that's in place runs out, we're gonna sell the pool. I think we need to decide what we want as a pool. Do we want an outdoor pool? Once we make that commitment, then I think it's a logical step to utilize the roof, yeah.
My question was for the LCLC to use that, not the pool.
Oh, I thought you were pointing to
No, I
the.
just pointed to what was up there.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
No, that's okay.
As part of the energy management plan, is there any sort of communications plan to ensure that residents know that their money is being invested in energy management, and this is the return that their dollars are seeing on that investment? Just so
I
it's
don't follow
always-
your question exactly.
Is there information regularly going out to the residents of Bridgewater to let them know that the town of Bridgewater is investing in energy management? We're seeing returns on that, and just letting them know how, you know, I think this is a fantastic use of money that's seeing a return on investment. I want to make sure that they all know that too.
I think it could be argued that we don't do that enough. So, for example, at the Discovery Fair that we had 2 weeks ago, we did a workshop on the energy savings that we've achieved in town facilities. You know, that might have benefited the 15 people that were at the workshop, but that's not a broad dissemination thing. I think that that's a great idea for the program. Do you have a suggestion as to how you'd like to see that go out, and we can make note of that?
Not specifically, maybe just in
Yeah.
3.0? That it,
3.0, yeah.
that it include a communications plan or some sort of outreach?
Any further questions, Leon? Well, thank you for that. It's a great update, and
Thank you.
look forward to the exciting things that are on the horizon coming from your, I'm gonna say department, but it's really planning, but perhaps energy should be a department.
Definitely no comment.
All right. Moving along the agenda, we have, we've already dealt with the Hillside Pines item, so we're down to Bridgewater Baseball Association request for reimbursement. There's a motion in your package. If someone would like to make that motion, please.
I move that town council of the town of Bridgewater refer the request from the Bridgewater Baseball Association, request for reimbursement for scoreboard, to the Parks, Recreation, and Culture Advisory Board for review, report, and subsequent recommendation to council.
Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor McDonald. Any questions or any discussion? It's kind of normal to get the feedback from the committee.
Yeah.
You look like you have a question.
Well, similar topic related to the Bridgewater Baseball Association came up a few years ago, and we had asked for financials on that organization to sort of understand how they're doing and so on. And I guess as part of that review, could we make that a request?
Yeah, we
Okay.
could. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's, I mean, they're not, because they're not going through the traditional grant process, it's a little different where we require it. But I don't think there's any harm in asking. Yeah, I guess we can do that. Can we follow
Absolutely.
up and do that? Would you like that to come here, or would you like that information to go as part of the package to PRNC?
Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. Any further discussion on that? Hearing none. Oh, Councilor
Sorry,
McDonald?
just a last minute thought. Why wouldn't it go to grants to organizations? Is there any reason that it would go to Parks and Rec rather than grants to organizations, or may it just make a couple of stops? Because that seems to draw it out.
Yeah, grants is an application process, and this is, they're asking for a reimbursement.
Okay.
So that probably is.
That's why,
the
okay.
reason. Yeah, that's a good question. Any other questions on that?
Who actually owns the scoreboard?
That's a good question. Maybe our director would, I would have assumed that the Baseball Association owned the scoreboard.
Well, since they purchased it, I guess at this point they would be the owner, but I don't have any past history on that ownership.
Yeah, I thought this was similar to, for example, the clubhouse that they built up at LaHave, right? So they built that. Is that not there?
The LaHave,
At the baseball diamond.
canteen
Yeah.
or area, the town funded that and through finance through the town and also through some grant applications as well. So that is definitely owned by the town.
That's owned by the town, okay. But we did not request this scoreboard. This scoreboard was put up by them specifically for
Right.
baseball.
So the report coming back, we will own it if we give the money.
So that's a question that we
You have
need to
answer that correctly.
answer, yeah. I mean, if we're reimbursing a total amount for something, I would assume that we're basically buying it. But we would need to make sure that that intention is clear, because if they wanted to move it, right? We don't want them to think they own it. If we have to be clear, I guess, we'll go with that. That's a good question. Any other questions? Hearing none, all those in favor? Those opposed? All right, so if someone can just make a note that there's been additional information requested, that'd be great. Reports and recommendation of the CAO Economic Development. Did you want to give us an update and report, please?
Sure. There's a few motions there, so I'll give a quick. So early on, as I've been getting onboarded with the town of Bridgewater, reviewing your strategic priorities and recent work, I have a need to bring forward some advice on our focus on economic development, particularly related to the dissolution of the the Bridgewater Development Authority and our ongoing support of the South Shore Regional Enterprise Network. So the report reviews that there is quite a breadth of scope that a town or a municipality can get in when getting into economic development. I'm recommending right now that we focus on doing four things. Firstly, taking our term communications position, slightly modifying the job description, specifically to include doing some work around business retention and expansion programming, and make that position permanent. Adopt the South Shore Regional Enterprise Network model for BRE, business retention and expansion. Expeditiously develop our real estate strategies and policies for council, particularly with regards to the new lands that we are now responsible for bringing to market, and create an action plan based on your priorities, the downtown plan, and the community energy plan, as opposed to developing an independent and whole new economic strategy. I believe there's enough work in there that aligns with what council has been talking about around priorities, that staff can quickly work on a action plan to help guide us through our upcoming budget process. So as such, I have that report and those four recommendations in front of you.
Questions from members of council? I like the pace in which your report proposes we do things, like immediately and right away and things like that. And I do appreciate that this is not to create another document that sits on a shelf, as Councillor McGuinness reminds us that we've had a number of documents that sit on a shelf and collect dust. This is to take what we have, that we've had a discussion over and over, council after council about, and actually get rubber to the road and not reinvent the wheel, but actually we've set out our priorities, so let's put them into action. To use the REN model, it's sitting there. It's cost shared with the province and other municipal units. This is what they do, so at least give that a shot. So I appreciate the actionable items in your report. Thank you very much. Questions about this from council? All right, well.
Yeah, no, it's good.
Okay. You thought that you'd have more questions than the scoreboard, didn't you?
Yes.
Okay, is someone prepared to make the first motion, please?
I would move that Town Council for the Town of Bridgewater approve the modification of the Communications Officer position to an Economic Development and Communications Lead position as per document 17-164 and proceed with recruitment for a permanent staff position.
Seconder from Councillor Thorburn. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Next motion.
Shall I?
Oh,
Okay.
Councillor Bergier.
I'll make the motion, Your Worship. That Town Council for the Town of Bridgewater support the approach to adoption of the South Shore Regional Enterprise Network approach to business retention and expansion program as presented in document 17-164.
Seconder, please. Councillor Thorburn. Discussion on that? Hearing none.
So
Oh,
just,
yep.
so the data that was collected by the BDA, is that going to be incorporated into this?
Yes, it's
Okay.
been shared. Yep.
Okay, shared data, okay, good.
Fantastic. Open source. See, that's what we're talking about.
Open source.
All right. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Next motion.
Move that Town Council for the Town of Bridgewater direct staff to develop policies for land sales considering guidelines of the Municipal Government Act.
Have a seconder, please. Deputy Mayor Tanner. Any questions on that? Hearing none. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Final motion in your package for that, please.
I would move that Town Council for the Town of Bridgewater direct staff to initiate and develop a 4-year economic development action plan based on Council's strategic priorities, the Downtown Master Plan, and the Community Energy Investment Plan for Council's consideration at a future discussion session.
Seconder, Deputy Mayor Tanner. Discussion on that?
Question?
Questions being called. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Fantastic. You have some work to do. Good. Welcome to Bridgewater. Next item is recommendations from Lunenburg County Multipurpose Corporation. This is citizen and council representative appointments. We have each, and I'm glad I remembered to let Councillor McGuinness know that he was being appointed. Otherwise, this would have been an awkward surprise. But would someone care to make the first motion, please?
I move that Town Council for the Town of Bridgewater endorse the recommendation of the Lunenburg County Multipurpose Center Corporation Board and appoint Andy Seelig as a non-elected representative on the board for a 3-year term ending October 31st, 2020.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder, please? Deputy Mayor Tanner, any discussion?
No, he's a good guy.
Andy's been great on the board
Yeah.
for the time he's been on, so looking forward to his reappointment. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Do you care to make the next motion, Councilor Graves?
I move that Town Council for the Town of Bridgewater appoint Councilor Bill McGuinness as its elected representative to the Lunenburg County Multipurpose Center Corporation Board for a 2-year term ending October 31st, 2019.
Have a seconder, please. Deputy Mayor Tanner. I do want to thank Deputy Mayor Tanner for his role. He's run out of terms to serve on the board, but you serve well.
Yeah.
It's has its challenges, but you've been good on that board, so we're going to miss you, but we'll welcome Councilor McGuinness.
Great to be back.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and with a straight face and all. Okay, any further questions? All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Lunenburg County Multipurpose Corporation capital budget process. So, we have this in front of us. As we know, our partners did not endorse this. But I believe that we should, in my opinion, I believe we should.
I agree.
I agree. It's good government. It's how it should proceed. And
Yep.
so,
Out of respect to the volunteers.
yeah, in my opinion, two wrongs don't make a right. So I am looking for a motion. Councilor Thorburn.
I would move that Town Council for the Town of Bridgewater endorse the recommendation of the Lunenburg County Multipurpose Center Corporation Board and adopt the draft proposal for the capital budget process of the LCLC document 17-037 as presented in document 17-167.
Seconder, Councilor Graves. Any discussion?
I'm just going from memory. Is there an amount on that? Should there be a maximum amount on that? I just throw that out there.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's really what we're changing is the process.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not,
This will be similar to what we would say is similar to the police board, right? So we get the number.
Okay.
We don't like the number as a council,
Okay.
then we can
Go
kick it
back.
back and
Okay.
say,
Yeah.
you know what, your capital budget's too
Okay.
high. The issues we faced last year, and I know you guys must have faced them the previous years,
Nickel and dime.
sitting in two separate rooms, trying to shave $10 off of this or $1,000 off of that. It was frustrating, and it did not help our relationship with our partners. You have a board that you're supposed to trust, let them do their job.
which councils actually control?
Well, if you don't trust them, then don't appoint those people to the board, right? We appoint people that work in the best interest of the community.
Question?
Questions being called? I was on a roll. All right. I love these ones. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion's passed unanimously. Thank you. Maintenance of the Veterans Memorial Park. There was work done at the park to prep it for Remembrance Day. And there's some information in your package there, but the Legion is looking for reimbursement for the costs associated with prepping that park. So we're prepared to make a motion.
I'll make the motion, your worship. I move the town council for the town of Bridgewater endorse the recommendation of the director of finance and approve a reimbursement of $3,500 to the Bridgewater Legion Branch Number 24 for maintenance, restoration, and cleaning at Veterans Memorial Park, funded from Veterans Memorial Park Reserve.
Seconder, Councilor Graves, and I should have said that on the onset, there is money set aside for this work, so
Yeah.
this is not like an unbudgeted surprise. There is money set aside for this, so we're just drawing down that reserve. It's there. Deputy Mayor Tanner.
So out of curiosity, why does this have to come to council? If there's a
Yeah.
reserve fund to deal with this and it's a maintenance item, do we know? Sorry, Richard.
No problem. So where it is a reserve, unless we establish that expenditure at budget
Okay.
time, at some point, council has to approve the expenditure.
Okay, all right, fair
I
enough.
found it very similar to what we do with the field house, right? Money comes in, we kind of hold it, and then it goes back out, but we've just held this money, I guess.
Yeah, okay.
That's a good question. Any further discussion?
Yeah, that park really needed cleaning up because it was originally in 2005, so it really looked like its original on Remembrance Day. And we've got big plans now that our convention's over and a bunch of stuff planned for next year, so you'll see even more improvements at the park.
Well, we heard at the Legion banquet, the comments made from high-ranking officials that were at that annual, event that you had this summer, talking about how it's probably the nicest Veterans Memorial Park in Atlantic Canada.
Yeah.
So
It's good.
it's something we should be proud of. Any further discussion?
Question?
Hearing none, all those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Next item is 11.5, Business Incubation Feasibility Study. So that is there. Mr. McCollum, would you like to just speak to that, please?
Sure. So this is just simply an information report to put a study that was completed by the BDA into the public realm. So there, in 2016, the Bridgewater Development Association received this report that was an outcome of a $35,000 grant around business incubation. The proposed cost of the incubator includes capital funding ranging from a $150,000 budget to over $1 million plus operational funding. Based on our current review, we believe that this report can be put in the domain and considered through the Downtown Planning Advisory Committee or council in the future. However, we assess that between the work of CO3, Art Happening, the King Street Economic Development Center, the development of a BRE program, and the REN, the desired outcomes of the study are being addressed currently already.
Perfect. Any questions on that? Councilor
So I
Graves?
guess that information would be shared with Co3 and Art Happenings and all that, so they would have access to the information.
Sure. This now becomes a public document.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Any further questions on that? if you have any questions that come up in the future, please find the CAO. Next item is recommendation of Director of Parks, Recreation, and Culture, Advisory Committee appointments. And so we do have our youth rep that we're so proud to have every year. And then we have Sarah Smith, who will be on the committee for another 3 years. And she's already started, so we're appointing her for a 3-year term.
She just finished a term for Susan O'Toole, so she's starting her own three-year term.
Right.
And I just want to mention, though, that the youth representative, Emma Wagner, she's a grade 12 student. She's been a resident of Bridgewater her entire life. She participates in sports such as hockey, softball, track and field. She's involved with Students' Council. She's a member of the Gay Straight Alliance Committee and Key Club, and she also hopes to participate in Teens Against Drunk Driving. And she's planning to go to university next year and then hoping to attend law school after that. So I just met her the one time, but she seems really confident, very friendly, and I think she's going to be awesome on our committee.
Yeah, she's
So
great.
I'd just like
Fantastic.
to recommend.
Someone care to make the motion for those appointments, please? Councilor Graves.
I move the Town Council for the Town of Bridgewater endorse the recommendation of Parks, Recreation, and Culture Director and make the following appointments to Park, Recreation, and Culture Advisory Committee. Emma Wagner as youth representative for a 1-year term ending August 31st, 2018. And Sarah Smith for a 3-year term ending October 31st, 2020.
Can seconder, please? Deputy Mayor Tanner, any discussion? Pretty straightforward. Hearing none. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Next item is Bridgewater Transit Pilot Project Advertising Policy. So we discussed this when we were bringing this into, making this a reality. And part of the revenue source was going to be advertising. And I know that many of us have already spoken to businesses who've reached out to us about kind of this exciting new way to promote their business. So if, Mr. McCollum, do you have any information to share on this? Or?
Simply, we'd like to go out and get some money and create some revenue and sell some advertising, and have provided council with a advertising policy for the pilot project that should enable us to do that work.
Perfect. Any questions on that? Councilor McDonald.
Would this be implemented during the pilot or only once it's a permanent? Okay.
No, I think it's, we pass it and we go, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And like I said, we do have businesses that, I mean, I've had one business in particular that keeps asking, so. Yeah, so we'll have to do it again, or
Yes.
at least put it back
Okay.
into the realm. Okay, is someone prepared to make a motion to that? Councilor Thorburn.
Ooh, I don't have it read up, but I can. But I was going to ask a question.
Oh, why don't you ask a question?
The thing I did read in here somewhere where the ridership seems to be up around 2,000. Is that correct, or do we have any other information on the numbers?
Through the mayor to council, every week Jessica and Mackenzie advise me that ridership's increasing every day, and people are continuing to make those decisions. So I believe that we're averaging over 70 a day. So that's continuing, each week to bump up, which is good news.
Good news, great. Then I'll bring the motion forward.
Thank you, perfect.
Thank you. The Town Council for the Town of Bridgewater endorse the recommendation of staff and adopt the proposed Bridgewater Transit Pilot Project Advertising Policy as presented in document 17-171 as policy 90 for the Town of Bridgewater.
Do we have a seconder? Councilor McDonald. I just want to add one thing. I asked Mackenzie the other day, what was the largest demographic that was riding the bus? And the answer is that they can't tell us what the largest demographic is because every demographic is almost equally represented on that bus, from youth to seniors, which is exactly what we wanted. But I think all of us probably thought it would be mostly seniors on the bus.
Yeah.
And so I'm thrilled just to say that that is not the information that we're getting, that it is every demographic is representative. So that's
Wonderful.
fantastic news. Deputy Mayor Tanner.
Just a quick question on and I may have missed it somewhere else, but on 4.3.1, it talks about the schedule may be amended from time to time, meaning I assume the pricing schedule, correct?
Correct.
Does that mean that staff at any point in time can also negotiate those rates with the potential advertiser, similar to the way you would probably negotiate a rate with a newspaper? So those aren't
Those are,
hard and fast rates, so it's,
those are council's approved rates. Yeah.
so I guess if staff are finding that they're getting pushback from the business community saying, it's
We'll come
too
back.
much, or
Yeah.
what happens?
We would need to come back to council.
You would have to come back to council for that.
And again, this is only for the pilot phase,
I
right?
know,
So,
okay. Just wanna make it easy,
yeah,
but, okay.
I would think that once we get through pilot, when we want to put this in something, we would make it so there's some flexibility, I would
Okay.
think. But that's a good
Noted.
good question. We can pivot pretty quick if it needs to come back. It's just one meeting, right? Okay, good question. Councilor Graves, you had a question?
It was just a comment. A lot of the childcare centers are using the bus. It's giving them, opening up a whole new world for them, so giving them opportunity to explore other parts of the town, so it's good, all positive, all good.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. Any other comments? Or?
I have a question on the actual contract.
Okay.
4.6.4. The contractor chosen by the advertiser is responsible for the installation of interior and exterior advertising on the Bridgewater Transit buses. All advertisements installations must be completed in a timely manner. I'm just, who's the contractor? Who's going to control what goes on the bus?
So we would control what goes on the bus, but the advertiser chooses their contractor. So whether they go to Spitfire, they go to Lighthouse to get the material made up.
Right, but who actually puts it on the bus?
It says here that the contractor that's chosen puts it on the bus.
And who chooses that contractor?
The advertiser.
Yeah, see, I have a concern there, because it's our bus. And if it's not put on properly, something falls off, blocks the vision of the driver, whatever the case might be, does our insurance like that?
Well, the contractor has to be
See if you-
insured. That's in the next bullet. Mr. McClellan, did you?
So I can get some more specific information on how we will manage the risk of contractors. Certainly, anybody that was allowed to install something on the bus, this would need to be what they do. So I'm just quickly driving through this to see if I'm missing anything, but I can come back with how that risk would be managed by staff.
I don't have any problems, I just have a concern for our liability.
Sure. And we, if it's okay with council, we can confirm via email to council how we're managing
Sure.
that risk.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any more questions? Hearing none, we have a motion on the floor. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Recommendation of the Director of Parks, Recreation, and Culture for surplus temporary skate park equipment.
Okay, so we're seeking approval from council to donate the temporary skate park equipment that's existing at the temporary skate park. There's 5 pieces, 2 quarter pipes, 2 two-way ramps, and a portable manual pad. And the staff and the Bridgewater Skate Park Committee believe that the temporary equipment has served its purpose, and we see no value in holding on to it. There's no appropriate asphalted location at the permanent site to relocate the equipment. The permanent facility will serve the needs of the beginner and to advanced users, and the new park is anticipated to be completed except for some landscaping and signage prior to or by next spring. So the committee feels that the equipment would be best served by donating it to a municipality or incorporated community organization or school that would like to gauge interest in all-wheel sports. We have received a letter from the Riverport Community Center, and they have indicated their interest in this equipment, either borrowing it for a while or purchase or keeping it permanently. But they'd still like to have a conversation on that. So prompt sale or donation of the temporary equipment is advised to avoid 2 moves of the equipment off-site and to its new home. Currently, like every year, we in November we push the equipment to the side because the LCLC wants to keep that space available for snow removal purposes. And each move is quite hard on the equipment. So we're trying to make this process go, I guess, as quickly as possible and cost effective. And so I would like to recommend that council declare the temporary skate park equipment as surplus and direct staff to proceed with advertising to donate the temporary skate park equipment through an open and fair process.
Any questions to our director, Deputy Mayor Tanner?
Sandy, did we grant the high school group money to build the ramps? And
the
those two-way
town
ramps?
had some money in the budget to cover the cost of it, and
Okay.
the high school students, did it as a project
Right.
at the school, part of their program.
So should we be asking Mr. Muir and if they want that piece of equipment since they built it, I guess, how do you know what they...
Just want to mention that 2 of the pieces, though, have a much longer history and were factory built as well. So just 2 pieces that were built.
No, just the ones
from
they
them.
built is
Yeah,
what I'm
yeah,
asking, I guess.
yeah.
Is it out of courtesy, should we ask that group, in essence, do you want what you built back?
Or did they build them on our behalf?
Well, they did, I mean, they
So,
built them on our behalf, or you said so, just a question, I guess.
Depends on the will of council. I believe Councillor Graves was first.
So the idea is to give it away as a complete unit, as a set? Not to nickel and dime and piecemeal it?
I guess we didn't really have a discussion about
Yeah.
that. I was thinking it would be as a set, but that's, I guess, open for discussion.
And then the advertising, is it a matter of just putting it out there in the community, or is it a matter of phoning the South Shore Regional School Board, phoning the municipal units, the Parks and Rec directors? Is there a little...
I was going to consult with our finance department just for, how best they felt this would be done, but we definitely would, get the word out to, or I would make an effort to get the word out to the different municipalities and recreation departments and, community groups.
Okay.
Councillor McDonald.
In the surplus equipment policy, I don't know it well, but would it almost give the school an opportunity up front to express their interest because they are within the town of Bridgewater and, there are some components that would kind of put them at the top of the list if they were interested?
For sure.
Yeah, okay.
I guess that was my second question. What criteria are we using to award this to the people that are gonna write to us and request it?
Yeah.
Have
And
we
currently,
defined
there is no criteria laid out
Right.
on how that should be done.
So, I guess, we can, happy to leave it with staff to define that, but, you'd want to somehow figure out okay.
If we do pass the motion and we direct staff to get rid of or dispose of it, it appears that we'd be saving some money because it's costing us $1,500 a year to install it and remove it. And it has to be done very quickly because snowflakes could be happening as quick as tomorrow. So it's something we can't play with for weeks and weeks and weeks. So.
Only in HRM, no snow here.
Someone censor that man.
Councillor McDonald.
How much time do we have before it needs to be moved?
Well, I did talk to the manager of the LCLC, and he said to kind of keep an eye on the weather, and once snow does start coming, that they'll be looking for it to be moved.
I drove to Halifax today, and starting in easily Chester area, it was a full-on snowstorm, so time's ticking.
That's why I brought it up.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, and to Deputy Mayor Tanner's point, if we're going to advertise that this is surplus equipment, then those who did put it together for us at this high school have the opportunity to say, we'd like those back. They wouldn't be excluded from the process.
Okay.
We probably should at some point define who gets surplus equipment, if we want it to go to nonprofits first or charitable organizations first before it goes elsewhere, but that's for another discussion. Councillor McDonald.
How long is the advertising period?
I
Or
don't, we don't,
how long do we receive?
do we have we don't have a policy on this, do we? So,
I don't think so.
and are we gonna literally take an ad in the newspaper, or are we just gonna put it out on our social media?
Yes.
And, as the director said, just gonna email her contacts?
So through the through the mayor to council, our surplus policy looks at a process where it's a once-a-year thing, advertised, and go at it. What we're seeking today from council is direction to declare the stuff surplus, and we'll put it out there, you know, on our website or social media and email. Hopefully that does bring in some proposals or a proposal, somebody that'll take it away and we don't have to continue to move them. Clearly, if the school comes forward or whatever, they would get, you know, first notion, and we would likely recommend that. However, we just want to start that process now instead of waiting for the next cycle
Yeah.
to find a new owner for this equipment.
And we are kind of suggesting donating versus selling the equipment.
Yeah,
Yes,
come and get it.
as long as they come and.
Would you like to have a motion?
Yes, I would like a motion on the floor.
I move the
please.
town council of the town of Bridgewater endorse the recommendation of the director of Parks, Recreation, and Culture and declare that temporary skate park equipment is surplus and direct staff to proceed with advertising to donate. The temporary skate park equipment is identified in document 17-174 through a fair and open process.
Can I have a seconder, please? Councilor McDonald. Any further discussion? We've had quite a good one. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried.
What hands you got?
Our next item is Glen Allen Connector Trail. So you have some information in your package. This was an item that went through the budget process. It was approved at budget time. For those just wondering where that is, so from Hollingsworth towards Stretch, kind of at the foot of Hollingsworth, we've owned parkland back there for 20 years.
Since 1988.
So lots of years.
29 years.
Thank you. Must have been a banker. Since 1988. So it could have been used for a trail in 1988 or any year after. So this connector trail is going to complement the area and work its way into the Glen Allen Park, which is seeing an increase in use. We did have some concerns raised from the 5 houses that back onto this piece of property. A number of us went through deep into the woods and did a walkthrough with Nick Brown, and I think it was a great exercise in really openness of staff and council, and the fact that we met the residents that had some concerns. We've addressed their concerns. We actually moved the trail to address their concerns. So I think the takeaway for people should be, if you voice your concerns and you have legitimate concerns, and staff and council will take them and work with them, and where we can, make changes. So looking at the map of how the trail's been moved, like hats off to staff. They've pushed it as far as they can.
You did.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Nick's way of hiding the gallery, but it doesn't get any closer, I don't think, than 30 feet from the back of a private property, which is, that's in a wooded area, that's quite a buffer. So I was pleased with staff's willingness to move that.
Yeah, and one of the property owners is quite happy that we've also moved part of the trail across the stream, and she was really happy with that. She said if it could be moved there, that would be great, and she was very satisfied with that.
So there's information in there. I don't know if anyone has any questions. Right now, as we know, it's a $36,000 project funded by the province and the federal government. So there is a request in to make it an accessible trail with a funding request to the province.
Yes. Yeah, there's currently the project right now is at $36,000. 18 is funded by Connect 2, Department of Energy. 18,000 was from the town. And I have put an application in for additional funding to make the trail, as you say, entirely accessible.
What? No. That was ours, yeah.
All right. Councillor McDonald.
If the $22,000, if the additional funding to help cover the $22,000 isn't awarded, then does the town just cover the extra, or what is the ask there?
The ask is for I checked in with Department of Energy Connect 2 and asked them if we could continue on with the project if the trail is not going to be like 100% wheelchair accessible, and they said yes, go ahead with it, and so we can do that. But if in the meantime I let them know that we were going to apply for additional funding to try and make it wheelchair accessible, but their funding is not dependent on that. They said we will not lose our funding due to that. So I applied for that funding, and also that was for a federal grant. Next year we could also apply for another provincial grant for accessibility as well.
So just to clarify, if it doesn't happen right away, because I'm a big believer in making things as accessible as possible.
Yes.
If it doesn't happen this year, if the funding isn't awarded, there are other options and it may be made accessible in the future?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you.
Any further questions? Someone prepared to make a motion?
Yes, I move that Town Council for the Town of Bridgewater endorse the recommendation of staff as outlined in document 17-176 to continue the Glen Allen Connector Trail development.
Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Vergier, any further discussion?
Sorry, when do we expect to know the stretch, that piece of land, what the status of that is?
Through the mayor to council, staff are working at that, and that will come in a future session.
Any other questions? Hearing none, all those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you very much. Our last item, business arising unfinished business, Municipal Joint Service Board Agreement. We've been kicking this one around for
A year.
So it's nice to see it back. My understanding is with some wording changes, MODL passed this today. Does someone want to make a motion and then we can discuss this?
I'll make your
Councillor
motion, your worship. That Town Council for the Town of Bridgewater approve the revised Municipal Joint Service Board Agreement and its execution by Mayor and CAO as presented in document 16-207G.
Seconder, please.
Oh,
Councillor Thurman beats to it. Discussion. Deputy Mayor Tanner.
Oh.
I'm having a little trouble with 14, 4, 5, and 6, and I don't know if it's grammatical or if it's just I'm not understanding what it's saying. So 4 says when the board contracts with a municipality or other person to provide a service or in addition to a service. Is the board getting that service from a municipality or other person, or is the board delivering that service to the municipality or another person?
Through the mayor to council, that's so they can buy the services.
The board
Is contracting, they're buying.
from the other municipality or service, okay.
Yes.
And that says the contract must not impose any additional net cost on the board and or parties to this agreement. So what's that mean then?
Through the mayor to council, this is a fairly maybe overdone set of terms to make sure that if the board is contracting from somebody else, they're able to contract, but they're not allowed to go over their budget. And if they need to go over their budget, it has to go back, and two of the three partners have to agree to it. So it really makes sure that, yes, the board's allowed to contract to people, but they're not allowed to overspend their budget. And if they do overspend the budget, it has to be approved, number 6, by two parties right there. So it's...
Okay, so number 6 then, 51% of municipal operating contributions. How is that calculated? Like, So where are the contributions coming from? So the waste site, there's 3 of us involved in that. We each are paying a certain amount each year to manage that waste site, correct? IT, there's 3 parties involved. We're each paying a certain proportion of that. So have we thrown that into a Excel spreadsheet and worked out what 50%, 51% actually means? Meaning 51% be one member?
Yes.
It says we're at least 2 parties representing at least 51%. So it says 2 parties.
We're at least 2 parties, okay, representing at least 51%.
So it's not 51% on its own.
each of 3.
Each of 3, yeah, okay, so, okay.
Gotta be 2.
It's gotta be 2.
Yeah.
So I don't see any practical way where we're not part of the
One could-
approvers.
Okay.
So even if the one partner is 55%,
Okay.
that they need another partner to bring that
But
up.
with respect to IT, that fluctuates depending upon the use.
Yeah.
We currently use more than MODL in Town of Home Bay, but that might switch.
But you still need the 2 to make 50.
You still need the 2.
Yeah. It's a good question, though.
Sorry, 51% of the sum of all services the board is managing, I assume.
Oh, as opposed to of that particular.
Yes.
Nintendo, yeah, of all services, okay.
I know these questions are important. Ask your
Is
question.
that explicit?
Not really.
I didn't get that.
I don't wanna make it too wordy, but
No, but if we need to clarify it, then we'll clarify it because we're not changing the document. If we're just adding a word or 2 for clarification, it's in everyone's best interest.
I mean, because it's under contracting, it could just mean this one service.
That's how I
But-
take it.
That's how
That's what I took it.
Yeah.
But it does say municipal operating contributions, which could be the whole. So it's not.
For some reason, section 14 confused that.
A lot of the wording is like that. Through the mayor to council, if it's the will of council to approve this, we're happy to provide that this is our interpretation.
Okay.
And just
Okay.
advise them this is the way we read it and document that.
And how do we want to interpret it? Per service or is it total?
Per total is the way I would read that.
Well, it would have, I think it would have to be, because at the time of agreeing to it, you wouldn't know what your contributions were
Okay, so it's a total.
of the existing
But we
services.
will have to clarify that.
Yep.
Is everyone okay with that? When we go to clarify that, that's our position?
Yep.
Okay. Other questions?
Yeah, I'll just review. There's
Yeah.
through the mayor to council, the council at Modal had noted 2 fairly similar changes. So in section 5.4, instead of using the term his or her, they've asked that the term there be used. And in 9.2, instead of using the term with respects, they believe that the S should be dropped and it should be with respect. They had 2 non-substantive changes they asked to be included.
I had a question on 13A 3. I mean, I think I know the answer, but a proposal to evaluate a new shared service must be approved by each partner council prior to beginning the review. So this could be a huge stumbling block if I interpret this to mean, let's say it's a new service, but Mahone Bay is not interested because it's just not. Let's say it's, I don't want to use an example, get anyone upset because I'm not reviewing it. But it's a service that Mahone Bay just doesn't, they're not gonna use it. So it's not that they don't want it, it's just they're not gonna use it. So does this mean that if they say no, that it does not even get reviewed? Or can they say, we're not gonna buy into it, we know that, but the other two, MODL and Town of Bridgewater, because we are going to potentially use it, the review can happen? Or if someone, as soon as one person says no, nobody gets anything? Actually, I used the building inspector one, that's a great example. We've already said that we want it reviewed by the MJSB. And let's say Mahone Bay says, yeah, we can see the review. If MODL says, no, we don't want it, we're going with the 5, does that mean it's dead? Or we can still review it?
So through the mayor to council, your reading, if it is correct, everybody needs to agree to the review before a review is started.
Not a majority.
Not a
No,
majority.
it must be approved by each partner council prior to beginning a review. So do you have a list in your head of all the items that all three of us are gonna agree? It's
Short, no.
I would have preferred
51%.
51% or 2 or 2. I mean, you don't want every little thing that doesn't make sense to be triggered by one. If only one unit's going to use it, then it doesn't make sense to review everything. But my goodness, if 2 out of 3, and not to pick on Mahone Bay, but if MODL and the Town of Bridgewater said, we want IT services, and Mahone Bay said, we only have 5 computers, we don't need it, we could potentially not have the IT service that we have today. Right?
No, you're right.
Yeah.
Had Lunenburg signed on with MJSB and said, we're not going to participate in the waste site, we would not have realized the savings we would have in the solid waste site, because they used to be our partner.
Mhm.
So I am concerned that 13A3 is going to be a constant and nagging barrier to reviewing a service. Does anyone else?
Should be the majority.
It should be the
2 of 3 if they're gonna go.
And this is just a review. I'm not talking about implementing. Nobody should have to take on a service that they don't want to take on.
Right.
Yeah.
But I see this as a barrier to the very first step, which is reviewing the services.
You want to have it.
I agree.
Yeah. But if you look at 13B, we're getting right back into where we are now with shared service outside of the agreement with inspectors. It says right there,
Mhm.
doesn't exclude other service sharing arrangements outside of this agreement. So it's kind of contradicting each other.
Or it's setting itself up to make it very appealing
Yeah,
to work outside this process.
right.
Councilor McDonald.
What if you want to work with municipalities who are not typically involved in Municipal Joint Services Board? What if there was something we could work with HRM on, like transit?
So nothing,
This doesn't say that we can't.
nothing makes it so that we cannot work on a shared service agreement
Right.
with someone else.
Which is what we need 13B for, right? So nobody can come back and say, well, you had to put that through here first. And transit's probably not a good example because no other municipalities involved in MJSB have transit, but, you know, there may be agreements that we just can't hold with these members. So is that where 13B comes into effect and does benefit us? Or where we are able to sell a service?
So, to get to the, I guess, to the question, both 13A and 13B, the building inspectors is a good example. 13B clearly allows the units to look at something outside of this, and that was important to the other units. 13A, as the mayor indicated, means that everyone needs to agree to a review for the MJSB before the MJSB can review it. So you are reading both of those correctly.
It has to be the majority of council.
So can we change the wording to that one to mimic 15.2 that has that wording of where at least 2 parties or majority if there are more than 3 parties representing 51% of municipal operating contributions?
Yes.
So, or which one, sorry? 14.6. Oh, I think it's the same wording, yeah. So 13A, 3, a proposal to evaluate a new shared service must be approved by at least 2 parties or a majority if there are more than 3 parties representing 51% of municipal operating contributions. Can we just?
Yeah. That
Just
makes it clear, easier.
I mean, it changes what they approved, I understand that.
Yeah.
It may change the intent of what they approve, which it's a discussion we should have. I mean, this isn't the first time we've seen this document, but I also think that over the last 6 months, things have changed to the point where when I read 13.3, I'm reading it differently than I read it 6 months ago, where I thought, well, we'll just forge ahead together. And now I'm thinking, I'm worried it's an escape clause.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, no, I was just gonna, you're gonna defer to the senior. I mean, there's gotta be some, if you have partners, there's gotta be some trust. And I'm starting to get a little weak with the way this is worded. This and some other things in there that I ignored. But this one here, to me, is a deal breaker. You're either in or you're out. It's a shared service agreement. And I think there's got to be more flexibility in that clause.
That too.
I'm just trying to think of the best path, because I think that whether it's best to approve the agreement with changes or refer it back with those comments, and particularly with the timing of our request on the building officials. What I'm wondering is, should that request be referred back to the MJSB, the members on that board, for consideration? And that might not be the right approach, because it needs to go to all the councils for agreement. I think it should be on the agenda, though. I think next week, when we ask the MJSB to consider reviewing the building officials file, I think the fact that council has this question needs to be there and not miss that board meeting.
So my question, my issue here is cart before the horse scenario in 13A.3.4, and you've kind of touched on it, because how can the board decide that, oh, we want our individual councils to look at building inspection, when the proposal going back to councils has to have all this data, including the cost of evaluating? We did this process flow diagram. I mentioned this to the mayor. We did this process flow diagram during my last term at MJSB, and it kind of allowed everybody to flow it out and see it visually, and it worked in the sense that councils would say, here are my top 3, or not necessarily ranking them, but at least it gave momentum for the Joint Services Board to say, there's some commonalities here, let's go evaluate a couple of these, and then we'll come back to councils and say, hey, what do you think? Whereas this is really, I don't know how you pick a service here, honestly. Because you wouldn't have a lot of that quantitative data to present to councils without doing some work.
That's right.
And this clearly says you got to go to councils first to ask to do the work. I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't support this document for that exact reason, that they have to create a proposal to bring to council. That's a lot of manpower, a lot of hours put into a proposal that's giving us very vague information that really doesn't give us much to make a decision on, and actually makes the service, the proposition of joining the services look weak. And then it gets thrown out, potentially, and all that work is wasted. Or it gets approved and they continue on the path, which is the only good direction it goes in. I want to be able to trust the Joint Services Board. I want to be able to trust the people that we've appointed to it to gather the information, make a decision on what services make the most sense, and bring that to us with some good information that we can get behind and support, rather than these vague reports that make me say, well, I don't know. We might as well continue going because I don't know yet with this vague report. So it just seems like you dance in circles before you get anywhere, and often we get nowhere because we've danced in circles. So I can't, for 13A3, I can't support the document, and I know we've had the conversation and our partners don't necessarily agree with just putting the trust in the Joint Services Board. But I can't get around that. It just seems like a huge waste of time and money, and the point of the Municipal Joint Services Board is to make things more efficient, both in time and money, and we're starting out by wasting time and money, and I don't get it.
I think for me, in number 3, it's an all or nothing. Either everybody agrees or nobody. Either everybody gets it or nobody. And I don't like that. No. Because it takes choice. It takes choice away from us, right?
Why don't we, so, great suggestion, thank you. Why don't we, we'll credit where credit's due. Why don't we send a letter to the member councils advising of our concerns for the wording of that document, that section. 3A3, first of all, with the power of one unit, regardless of their size, regardless of whether they would ever intend to have that service, the power to derail that. Yeah, A3. And also our concerns that documentation, the proposal has to have a whole bunch of information that it's not realistic to have, because who's going to do all that information gathering and research if one unit can just say, no, we don't want it, right? But if you don't have the information, of course they're not going to want it. You can't go in with no information. And then also copy the MJSB board. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And we can, in that, seek the clarification to Deputy Mayor Tanner's question about 14. I think we all share the same concerns with 13A. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Are we all, do we have consensus that we'd like the wording to reflect the same as 14, where it says 2 units or 2 units that make up at least 51%? Are we all, do we have consensus? Councilor Bergier, you're on board with that?
That's in addition to, for clarity, in 14.6 that you're referencing?
Well, it's figuring out, do you mean collectively for all of it, but also adding that to 13A3 to change that wording. So a proposal to evaluate a new shared service must be approved by at least 2 of the partners making up 51% of the total operating, however it was worded in 14.6. Any concerns with that? We'll send that to the partner councils and copy that to the MJSB. We'll do that right away because we have an MJSB meeting next week. They should have that.
Has Mahone Bay voted on this?
I don't think they
Not
voted
yet.
on it, just
It's really
MODL.
just MODL.
Yeah. So I don't know the impact
Yeah.
this will have, but usually we do things ahead of them, and they have to react to our changes. So
Anyway.
yeah. So shall we just defer that motion to the next televised council meeting?
Yep.
You're good with that? Yeah, are we okay
All
with that?
yes.
We're all unanimous on that?
Yes.
And the next televised council meeting, Councillor McDonald will be in this chair as both the deputy mayor and I are away. So, Councillor McDonald will be taking this opportunity to
Take it
lead
easy.
you through that. So, give you an easy one. Oh, man. Sorry. I'm sorry. Has anyone changed their mind? Okay. All right, so that'll be on the agenda for the next one. There's nothing else on this agenda. We have no new business. We do have an in-camera after this to discuss what falls under acquisition, sale, lease, and security of municipal property. Nothing else on the agenda. Can I have a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
Councilor McDonald, seconded by Deputy Mayor Tanner. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.